The LLC, Limited Liability Company, for you as a small business owner, is a one-size-fits-all. It has nothing to do with your taxes. So the thing to note here is there's two things that happen when you formalize your business. The first thing you're doing is setting it up at the Secretary of State to breathe life into a separate entity from you. That is a limited liability company. That's it. That's all you do at the Secretary of State in your state. That's it. That's all you can do. At the Secretary of State, where you set up this LLC, you're going to get a really cool official looking certificate saying that your business is an LLC. If there's any number that comes along with that, that is not your EIN. That is a tracking number for the Secretary of State that you'll never use except at the Secretary of State. Never, ever, ever, impossible at the Secretary of State do you determine anything else such as, are you an S Corp? That doesn't occur at the Secretary of State. Does not. You don't, with the Secretary of State, say you're going to be taxed as a partnership or a single member LLC. None of that. Believe it or not, even at the Secretary of State, you don't report who the owners are. All you're reporting at the Secretary of State is who is the registered agent. All that means is who does somebody contact at the LLC if they need to contact you. Everything else is done with another party, starting with the IRS. So now that you have your LLC, that tells the IRS nothing other than you have an LLC. So the first thing you've got to do is get an EIN. That's an employer identification number. Even if you're not an employer, that's what it stands for, and that's what you need next. That is going to give you an ID number for your entity for the IRS to track, and that's the number that anybody else wants to know when related to your entity, such as the bank. Some call it an FEIN, a Federal Employer Identification Number, but you are only getting that at the IRS, irs.gov. The next thing is, with the IRS, that is the only place that you tell the IRS how you are going to be taxed. So we said that you can set up an LLC, and that's at the Secretary of State. The second thing you're doing is just what we talked about. You got an EIN. You're done as Secretary of State, except for some annual filing to tell them you're still in existence, or maybe some other obscure thing that you're doing, but it has nothing to do with taxes at the Secretary of State. Now, the next steps in determining how you're taxed require you to take action. You saying, I'm an S Corp, does not make you an S Corp. You saying you're a partnership, single member, sole proprietor, filing anything has not occurred until you take another step, because you don't do that at the Secretary of State. Side note, the second you now have set up at the Secretary of State, you're an LLC, and you have that EIN, at that second, at that moment in time, you need to immediately go to fincen.gov and register that business within 30 days starting in 2025. If this happens to be in 24 when you're watching, you have 90 days, but most likely you're watching this in 25 or after, and you have 30 days to register it with FinCEN. Why? Doesn't matter. You need to do it. What if you don't? $591 fine as of the day this is recorded for not doing it. So just do it. Simple. Now, if right now you're going, gosh, it seems like a lot, you might be right, and that's why you need a tax professional. There's no reason to do these things yourself. These things are so easy that we don't even charge our clients to get an EIN. You registering at FinCEN takes you about 5 minutes. You getting something set up at the LLC, the Secretary of State, with your attorney, doesn't take that long to get it set up. What takes long is getting an operating agreement in place with the attorney. That's not done by your tax professional. Now, how do you determine how you will be taxed? You have time. You have time. The next step is to set up a bank account. The bank will need your certificate from the Secretary of State, your operating agreement, which is basically indicating how you will operate and the rules related to it, and your EIN, specifically the letter from the IRS indicating your employer identification number. That's what you're doing next. You're setting up a business account. There's no reason to ask any more questions. You do these things. This is exactly what we tell our clients. Wanted to pause for a minute. I'm JJ the CPA. I've been doing this for 32 years, working with thousands of small business owners like you. A certified public accountant. I've had my own tax practice for 27 years. This is all I do, advising these things every single day. Unfortunately, we're not taking on new clients. You will find that it's hard to find a good tax professional. So you want to start looking now as you're getting busy now building your business. Hopefully you already got somebody. Now I will say this, many would say, JJ, I got a lot of questions. How can I get some of these things answered? My tax professional isn't proactive. It's not somebody that's helping me. Well, I've got a link in the body of this video to a tax consulting group where I can help you just with that. Now let's get back to it. Now some will say, well, no, you got to decide how you're taxed. Well, if you follow the steps that I'm telling you, you have time. Now, some would say, well, you got to decide within 75 days if you're going to be an S corporation, and they would be correct. However, you have allowable time beyond that. If you know what you're doing and you're working with a tax professional that knows what they're doing, you have beyond the 75 days. You just have to file an additional item with that form to tell them you want to be an S Corp. Why would you wait to determine how you're going to be taxed? To determine how is your business doing? How much money is it bringing in? Did you end up taking on another owner? Did you end up actually doing what you set out to do, or did you find a better way to go about it? Because the LLC that you set up with the EIN can actually do whatever it is you decide to do. You don't need to have separate LLCs for doing separate things if you haven't even started anything. Now, if you're getting into more complicated and you're a tax professional and you go, well, what about this and what about this? You know that what about this and what about this has nothing to do with someone who is just now starting a business, because then after you open the bank account, here is your next step. Get a customer and put money in that bank account. That is your next step. Figure out what the plans you had in play, are they coming into existence? Is it happening? Because depending on your effort, depending on who owns this with you, depending on how much money comes in the initial phases of your business, that determines how you might want to be taxed. Many people pause and can't come up with the right name, so they never have an LLC and they never start a business. Or they do all the steps that I just said, they open a bank account, but now they want to waste time and effort trying to figure out how they're taxed as nothing more than an excuse to not get underway making money. Because having an LLC, filing at the Secretary of State, getting an EIN with the IRS, filing with FinCEN, and getting a bank account open doesn't mean you have an active business. It means you have a shell. You've set up the LLC to separate this business from you. You've set up this LLC that the assets inside this LLC are separated from you to protect you from the LLC, any liability that you have from the assets in the LLC, and vice versa. You've gotten the EIN so that you can have an identification number for all purposes. You set up in a bank account to have money go into it for your business. Seeing how all that actually comes to fruition is then determining how you want to be taxed. So I've got a link to another video that talks about when would you want to be taxed as an S Corp. Got another video, when do you want to be taxed as a partnership? When do you want to be taxed as a sole proprietorship? But what I'm telling you, after 32 years working with thousands of small business owners, many think, well, I can't go do anything. I can't bring in any money till I know how I'm going to be taxed, and it's hogwash. That has nothing to do with you going out and making money. Any business that comes in the door to us, we have time. And with the LLC, if you know what you're doing and you hire a tax professional, there's a Form 8832 that allows you to pivot in that initial year to decide what it is that you want to do or change your mind later in certain circumstances. All I'm saying is if you're a new business, get underway making money. Well, how much time do I have to be able to decide what it is I'm going to be taxed as? Well, I'll give you one simple target deadline to determine this. What year are you in? Get a calendar out. What year are you in? Go to the next year and circle March 15th. You want to make a decision by then. Why? Doesn't matter. Go make money. You have until then. A tax professional that disagrees is missing the point of this video. The point of this video is for a small business owner to do what's actually most important, which is go make money. How am I going to save tax? You haven't even brought in a dime. What can I write off? You haven't brought in a dime. What should I do here? And what about the retirement? All it is excuses to not go out and do what you've set out to do, which is make money. I've got other videos on all those other questions. When you start making money, then you can start making decisions. Typically with our clients, by the time we hit January of the following year, whatever year you're in, by the time we hit January, we know, okay, you're heading in this direction. This is how you want to be taxed. If you know what you're doing and you're smart and you're educated in taxes, that is not probably you as a small business owner. That's why also you want to have a tax professional and ensure you have time to find a tax professional so that you can be making these decisions. A tax professional right now that their mind is blown actually doesn't know what they're doing. They don't know anything about taxes. If they think anything I've told you is not correct, it means they're not educated. So with this being said, you can take a deep breath and relax and start doing what it is that you set out to do, which is make money. Don't use all of these other questions that you need to resolve, which have already been solved, to now cause you to not actually go out and make money. Because this is where we see many small businesses pause, stop. They can't get it past that. Well, what about this? And what about this? And then I want to do this and I want to do this. Get going. The rest of this will come. When you bring in money, then figure out what you can write off. I got a video on that. Now you've got a lot of money sitting there, more money than what's going out. Then you figure out, well, what do I got to pay myself? How do I got to pay myself? Once you got more money sitting there, you go, well, what kind of retirement plan? You got more money sitting there? Well, when should I hire an employee? You see what I'm saying? As you get to these steps with a good tax advisor and staying on top of it, you'll solve it when you get there. All right? Now, why did I kind of talk like a coach? Because I want you to be successful. I want you to make money. Why? I don't know. It's just fun. So with that being said, check out my playlist on other subject matters that you might have questions to. But guess what? If you haven't even started a business, what are you now going to spend your time doing? figuring out how to get money in that business bank account. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. You have a great one.